Hello, I'm Hushicho, author of The Long Library, a weekly comic that switches out its comics every so often to keep my creative muscles flexing. I am here, by request, to do a tutorial on hands, the plague of all artists. Or at least, if you're an artist like me, and I know I am, you have at one time or another wrestled with the concept of hands in art. Arm wrestled, perhaps? Well, I'll stop making stupid jokes now, but I'm using Clip Studio Paint, also known as Manga Studio 5, and EX. I'm currently using EX. I believe that the 3D materials are in all of the versions, so no worries. It's great for learners, it's great for professionals, it's a wonderful thing. It's just you drag and drop this 3D material. They've got a male and a female doll, and you can easily manipulate it. So as you can see, this can be really helpful for any artist because it moves naturally like an actual human would. And you can rotate things. You can even down to the fine control over the specific joints and such. And you can also go to the tool properties. It has a light source. It has different poses you can do. You can use these amusing little angles for the camera, which is great because it shows you exactly what you're getting. But if you expand the initial pose here, it has a slider to allow you to kind of bunch up in a kind of a fan, sort of like a compact fan, and then you can just sort of fan them out, separating them. So it's very cool, and as you pull it back, they curl into the palm, which is really super useful. But these are all very natural expressions of the hand too, which I think is fantastic. And you can lock specific fingers, so they'll stay in the same place. Let's lock the index finger, even when you're doing something else, so you can easily have them pointing at something like that. So I thought that is very cool, and it's all very natural poses, so it all looks very natural, and it's a great reference when you are drawing. You can manipulate on any of the three axes, and you can move the camera very easily so that you can get just the perspective you want of the hand. So that is a really useful tool I wanted to tell you all about. If you don't have Manga Studio though, the world is not ending. Because while they do have regular sales, you can also use one of the resources that most of us have been born with, which is your own hands. Just use your own hand, look at it. You always have one free. You can see how it changes and foreshortens by looking at your hand straight on. You can angle your hand up, angle your hand down. I know some of you are probably doing this because I'm actually doing this myself. You can also use a mirror, and you can also use a camera. I've got a really cool digital camera. I'm sure most devices have a camera functionality in them now, so if nothing else, you can use your own eyes, as many artists do, and get the idea of how hands work from those devices and from those pictures and from those eyes. But I'll start off letting you know that even if something looks right, it may not technically be correct, but that's kind of irrelevant. As long as something looks right, it doesn't technically have to be correct. If you can look at it and say, yeah, that looks right, then you might analyze it later and be like, oh no, this isn't technically correct. But as long as everybody thinks it looks right, or pretty much everybody, then you don't really have to worry about it. And usually, if you put too much detail into something, it makes it look horrifying. Like, that's one of the things that you learn early on, especially in like comics or cartoons or anything with style, anything that's heavily stylized. Especially if you're telling a story, don't put quite so much detail into it to make it look, quote unquote, realistic, because that has the effect usually of making it look horrifying. So what we are trying to do is take the basic shape of the hand, and as most all of the body, the hand is made up of shapes, and turn it into something we can stylize. So that's the basic shape of the hand. That was kind of crappy, but anyway, basic shape of the hand. Let's take lines, because lines are fundamental. We've got the index finger. The thumb comes about here on the index finger. You've got the middle finger, which is longer. You typically extend that in a gesture towards those who are less acceptable to you. And then you have the ring finger, which tends to be slightly longer than your first finger. And then you have the little finger, which is slightly smaller than your first finger. So basically, we have a proto hand here with all of the lines that we need to make it into a real hand. So I'm going to take down the opacity on that, make that a little bit less noticeable, so that we can draw over it. Normally I would just draw it all on one layer, but I'm desperately trying to be helpful and professional here. So we're on the more bold layer. So let's just fill it in. Looking at our own hand here, we can see that we've got the bones, but we don't have the flesh. So let's just round off those ends. We'll take the lines in here. And don't be afraid if you decide, oh, I'd rather have that line somewhere else. Use the eraser. You don't have to be beholden to the pencils that you set down or the sketches you set down. If it's something sketchy, when you're doing the development sketch, you can define it and refine it into something better, something that you like a lot more. So don't be afraid to do that. But let's round out these shapes, like delightful little jointed sausages or something. I don't know. Better teachers probably have better similes, but I'm afraid you're stuck with me, so just do your best. I'll try and make this brief. Here we go. We've basically got a hand shape. We'll take away that skeleton, but as you can see, we had defined a basic shape of the hand, and it's giving me a little no sign, just in case any of you were worrying about that. I'm on a layer that I took the little eye off of, but when I put it back, I can draw on it. I can't draw on an invisible layer. It would be kind of stupid anyway. Anyway, you've got a basic sketch here with essentially the bones of this, the fundamentals of the hand. So we'll get rid of that and bring back our hand. So as you can see, I've defined it out, fleshed it out a bit. It's got these lovely curved ends, and you can do a lot of different things with this, but basically this is a hand shape. That's good enough for most anything. I don't recommend trying to get too complex with hands right away, but you can do a lot of different things to imply the features of the hand that don't overcomplicate things. First, I'd like to talk about the knuckles, because we've always got them, all of us. The first two knuckles tend to be the most prominent. So you can draw something like this and have perfectly fine implied knuckles. You don't usually have to draw them for the ring and little finger because they're not always as prominent, but they won't look wrong if you just do them like that. It's generally just something that you can do if you feel like it's going to add something to the hand. You don't always have to draw the other side of the knuckle either. You can just imply it. You can even do something like little strokes like that. You can just do a lot of different things. You'll want to kind of have an idea of how you want to do that, if you want to do that. It can add a little bit of interest to the shape. We also have different ways of this going, and I did that a little bit too much. But as you can see, if you spread out your hands, you see that there's just like a little kind of U shape in the middle. And as you bring them closer together, you can see that kind of U shape like in there. That's why I drew this in here, because that's naturally there. That's not something that's like, you don't have webbed fingers, but it's a part of the hand that's at the bottom of the fingers, and it's less noticeable really, but it can make it look right, which is a good thing. But if you just draw in, just like you can even make this a little more circular if that is what you prefer, or you can do something like just do the lines like that. But keep an eye on where the fingers fall on the hand. And if you have the hand angled up, you'll want to draw more of these little shapes because you'll be able to see more of that skin when it's angled up like that. So there you have that. You can draw the lines of the joint if you want to. You can just leave it with one. Usually leaving it with one is good. Um, and sometimes like you can just draw like just little implications like that of it. This is especially good if you're trying to angle the fingers down. So if you're trying to do something like that, let's say we've got a finger angled down. Let's just do like a finger. And as you can see, the finger looks bent. And you can draw like little shading there to make it clear that the finger is angled down. You can draw like the beginnings of the fingernail. And that's a good way, especially with this foreshortening, to make it look like the finger is extended down. Fingers typically tend to extend like that, like something like that. They tend to go more down, they tend to curve inwards because you get like a kind of a gently curved shape. Like think of this. Think of mittens, basically. That is the basic shape of the hand. It's mittens. You can even work from this. You can draw in like that, and that's perfectly fine. That's good, actually. You just want to be sure that you've got all the links right. You know, the middle fingers should be the longest, and the index finger is generally a good index, so to speak, for the longer ring finger and the shorter little finger. So that's some good things to remember. You can also do cool stuff like I like to draw like a little line on one side to imply fingernails. And I think that looks really elegant and nice. Some people like to do it differently. Some people actually like to draw the whole fingernail. I'm not a big fan because it never looks right for me, and looking right is really important. But I feel like if you just imply it with a couple of strokes like this, you can do like the cuticle and the side of the nail. It looks really good. Looks really good. So also something to remember is that while there's only like two joints, like the basic knuckle that joins it to the hand, and then the middle knuckle on the thumb, there are three joints, the knuckle and the first knuckle and the second knuckle on the other fingers. Why do I mention this? Because you can either draw it, perfectly correctly, like let's say we're drawing a hand like this, and it's good. It's good to have options, and you don't have to draw a hand exactly the same way every time, but you should at least have it consistent each time you draw it. So if you're gonna just do like, if you're gonna stylize it and do like two major joints, try to keep that consistent with that particular panel or picture or whatever, because otherwise it might look kind of weird. It's up to you. If it looks right to you, and like you show it to a friend and you're like, does this look right? And they say, oh yeah, that looks right. Don't worry about it. But to me, it usually looks weird if like one finger has like, those three obvious joints and the other one just looks like two. But it is very stylized. You can sometimes do like, this elegant finger. And since you're not really doing anything here, but like, so you don't really have to have all three joints in your finger for it to look exactly right. But that depends a lot on what you feel is appropriate for the situation and what your style is too. So you really don't have to think too terribly much about all the angles in the finger, because sometimes, and especially in some poses, you don't really see the last of the joints, like, because they're very close to the nail, relatively speaking. So in many ways, in many poses, they won't be as prominent and they won't be as visible. If you need to simplify, it usually works. Essentially, the fingers are cylinders. They're stylized sausages, as I was saying before. The hand itself, as you can see, is kind of a, well, sort of a quadrilateral, but it also has, a little bit more complexity, what with the thumb and everything. But the thumb is in and of itself another stylized sausage. So you take that away. But with foreshortening, which is often done with hands and fingers, as you can see here, you can break this down, and I'll do this on another layer again. You break this down into first joint sausage, second joint sausage, and third joint with the knuckle sausage. As you can see, that is a sausage coming towards and slightly to the side of the viewer. And in much the same way, this is first joint sausage, second joint sausage, and third joint sausage. As you can see, that one is headed more down, it's curled in. And with the thumb, it's going to be the same story. This one, of course, is foreshortened. So if you don't know what foreshortening is, it basically refers to the practice of three-dimensional drawing. Like when something is coming towards the viewer, it is typically obscured in some way or looks shortened, even though it really isn't. That has to do with the perspective. And that's a whole other kind of worms I'm not going to get into. But just to tell you, if you can simplify things in your mind into the component shapes that make up that thing, it makes things a lot easier. So I hope you've enjoyed my tutorial on hands. I hope it's been really helpful for you. Feel free to follow me on social media, follow my channel here, subscribe. Please support me on Patreon. I'm going to make a lot more of these videos with the support I'm getting. And I hope that you've found this useful. Feel free to ask me questions too. I'm always happy to get questions, and although I can't make like specific videos unless I happen to be doing it anyway, unless you get to a certain level of patronage, I will take every suggestion and every question into consideration. And who knows, I mean, I might be sitting around one day thinking, I need to make a video about that, and you might just get a video about it. So I hope you all have a great time. Draw hands, don't be afraid of hands, and come back and see me next time, because I'm going to do more tutorials just for you. So have a great time. I'm Hushicho, and I'm happy if I've helped you get over your fear of hands, the plague of art. Have a good one.